Hey guys, it's Iconic, and in this one I wanted to quickly go over a build I have been playing with on stream for the past, I don't know, multiple weeks now. It's the build I decided to make while I was on holiday. It is Dark Effigy, and this is using the Gemling as an ascendancy. The reason for Dark Effigy is very simple. I wanted a spell totem and it's the only one available, but the base damage numbers looked horrendous, so we were starting off on what I would call a back foot. I'm figuring out scaling would have been the biggest challenge here, but we've been able to clearly figure it out, as you're probably seeing on screen. It's performed wonderfully, and I can comfortably say it can clear all content with investment. So as a quick disclaimer, Dark Effigy, this build is a button intensive build. You're going to have to play around with using, I think, about 4-ish buttons at a minimum, and the reason is Dark Effigy is a totem that requires you to apply debuffs on the enemy to actually get it to shoot. So aside that, it's a very smooth sailing build. You really only need to use 2 while mapping because you don't need the extra debuffs on the enemies anyways. But just putting that out there. Also, it is not a league starter. It needs uniques to level as if you want to level as it, and it doesn't even get its main DPS persistent gem until like Act 5. So before then, you are really just trying to, I wouldn't say cheese, but you're really just trying to survive and make do with what you have until then. Now, before we get started, I want to talk a bit about Dark Effigy and exactly how it works. So what is Dark Effigy? Dark Effigy is a spell totem that shoots projectiles at enemies afflicted by chaos damage over time debuffs. Now, these debuffs range from the likes of Contagion to Essence Drain, but it also includes stuff like Poison, because Poison ends up being a chaos damage over time debuff. So we're trying to maximize as many chaos damage over time debuffs on an enemy to get Dark Effigy to shoot as quick as it possibly can, because it shoots an extra projectile per enemy with each chaos damage over time debuff currently active on it. However, one quick look at Dark Effigy on PoE 2DB would tell you that Dark Effigy's projectiles have very, and I mean insanely bad scaling. Their base damage numbers are so low, it's baffling. So how do we scale the damage to the point where we can actually do the content you're seeing? Well, firstly, we're employing Archmage to give us a % of that extra damage as lightning damage. This means we're going to stack as much mana as possible to get that damage up as high as possible. But not only that, we're also going to be scaling its levels so that we can give it as high of a base damage as possible for Archmage to benefit from. So with these two scaling axes, we're actually able to pull a lot of damage from those low base damage numbers you were seeing on PoE 2DB. If you haven't already, do consider liking and subscribing, as it helps a lot with the algorithm and with hitting our 2025 goal of getting to 2,000 subscribers. A goal that if we hit, I will be revealing my face on stream and on YouTube afterwards. So if that interests you, do consider subscribing. So I want to briefly talk about the defensive layers on this build. And I want to start talking about it because in making this build, this was the trickiest part to getting the defenses to the point where it felt really good. So starting out, we are using Eldritch Battery, Mind Over Matter, and Chaos Inoculation as the core of our defenses. This means Mind Over Matter protects our life from damage with our mana. So damage goes first to our mana before we end up taking life damage. Eldritch Battery makes it so our energy shield, our base energy shield, is directly converted to mana. Keep in mind, this is base energy shield, so the ones coming from your gear, the flat numbers. % increase energy shield on the tree and from global sources will not affect this. And then Chaos Inoculation sets our maximum life to 1, but it makes us immune to chaos damage. So these three work in tandem to make it so we take all our damage from mana, but with enough mana regen, we are very tanky. And to supplement our mana regen, we are also employing recoup, which is a mechanic that allows you to regenerate damage you take over the course of 8 seconds. So one thing to note about the defensive layering of this build is there's currently no way to skill stun threshold in PoE2 based off of mana. So our stun threshold is currently set based off of the life we would have had before CI turned our life to 1. And as such, we have to find other solutions to stun, and we are using a bit of charm scaling to mitigate this. Now we are going for 2 charm sockets. The extra one's coming from the tree, so you don't have to worry about gear. The reason for this is having a low stun threshold means you have a low ailment threshold, and that means freezes can be a problem. Now other ailments are less so of an issue. You get shocked and whatnot, but the real biggest problem is you don't want any debuffs that make you lose control of your character and not able to cast. So we are going to be using stun charm and freeze charm on these 2 slots. And of course, we're going to be giving them modifiers that allow them to gain charges every second, just to help with uptime in situations where, in like single target situations, if you ever get into one the way you're getting stunned often. So we are also using a weapon swap setup to benefit from block, using a unique shield that allows you to recoup the damage you block as extra mana. And of course, keep in mind, when you block, you do not take any damage from it, so it's basically free recoup. If you do not know how to set up weapon swap in game, I believe Macro has a pretty good guide that covers what you need to know. So all of these different things effectively mean that we are immune to chaos damage. We have a lot of mana regen. We are recouping a large chunk of the damage we take as mana over time. We have block to avoid a good number of hits. We can get this over 50% if we prioritize block chance on the shield, which we should. And these scalings also feed into our offensive scalings. There is one caveat to our weapon swap setup, and that is that we do not use our wand there. And if we go cast speed on our wand, this means all the chaos damage over time debuffs will feel slightly sluggish. To combat this, we have a few sources of global cast speed allocated on the tree, and the idea here is weapon set 1 is able to maximize the use of it with our totems, but when we swap to our offhand slots, we still have access to those cast speeds sources to then feel a bit slightly better on the cast of like other skills. Also, something else to note is it is nice to get corrupted blood immunity on one of your jewels, especially if you are an ultimatum farmer, because this means the 4 beams that inflict corrupted blood just become a slightly free mod, which gives you a lot of recoup because they can actually be blocked. And of course, when you take damage, you take damage as hits, so you do recoup from that damage as well. Now to quickly go over my gear in game to kind of show what I'm working with here, I would roughly estimate my current setup to maybe be around 40 divines. And the main reason for that high number is I dropped my wand, and I would say this is probably like last I price checked this, which was a week or 2 ago, I would say this was like 20-ish divines or something. But you do not need this as a baseline to get it to work or anything. This is just what I have. I would say you can easily, I was using a +4 before while I was leveling. It felt good. XV level is obviously more damage, but if you do not have it, you do not have it. You don't have to break the bank for this. Get this eventually. It's not a priority to get +5, get +4, and then prioritize your mana, cast speed, all of those other stats. But anyways, we're currently using Alpha's Howl. The reason for this helmet is because we are using Ancestral Bond. Ancestral Bond is a keystone that makes it so you can summon as many totems as you can afford. but each totem is going to reserve 100 spirits. So this means Alpha's Howl effectively reads +1 totems because the 100 spirits. Now you can get a corrupted Alpha's Howl that has more than 100 spirits, so you can fit in some more like other spirits things basically. That is what you should get to eventually. I don't have that yet. I didn't want to invest into that. Our scepter, we're prioritizing spirits and mana, especially on the weapon set 1. We're going to be going for more mana regen focus on our offhand scepter, but this one you really want to get your spirit as high as possible, and you want to get your mana and intelligence as high as possible. Intelligence also being a mana skiller for Archmage. Amulet, we're prioritizing mana. Actually, we're prioritizing level of all projectile or spirits or spell skills, because either or works in Dark Effigy. Spell is probably better because it affects more spells that you have than projectile, so just keep that in mind. Then we have spirits, because we're trying to maximize how much spirits we have. And then we have damage recoup as also a priority, just so we are able to really pad that recoup layer, so we do not die to sustain damage. Chest piece is the same. You want to have as high of an ES base as possible on every piece of gear you have, because that is what Eldritch Battery converts to mana. So here we're prioritizing spirit, intelligence, and ES. Of course, fill out your suffixes with res. And same thing with the gloves: mana, intelligence, and ES. As you can see, these are not good gloves. They really aren't. They are very budget gloves. Our belt is a unique belt that allows you to recoup 50% of damage taken as mana. It can be corrupted to get 60% like you see here. I recommend the corrupted ones, but they do go for like I think I bought mine a divine. So keep that in mind. You can start with 50 and upgrade to 60 later on. It feels, any amount of recoup you can get feels better than not having it. And then boots, we're going for move speed priority, then intelligence, mana, and res. If you're trying to decide which is worth more, intelligence or mana on a piece of gear, think of it this way: each point of intelligence basically reads x times 4 of that number in mana. So this is 26 times 4, so slightly over 100 mana, whereas the mana roll itself is 176. So the mana roll should be contributing a bit more to my mana than the intelligence. If you're ever debating which is worth more, intelligence or mana, you can literally just translate your intelligence as whatever that number is times 4. So this will be 26 times 4 intelligence as an example. That about covers my main hand swap. Then on the swap setup, we have the Alchem Ira, which is the shield I was talking about. You're prioritizing this with as high of a block chance as possible, so you will need to get the corrupted one, because that would have increased block chance. But in any case, we're prioritizing this block chance, then max mana can come as a secondary, but you don't even need to look at it, because either or works. You can use the new shield because it got reworked, or you can use the old one. So long as you're getting as high of a block chance as you can, you're fine, because that's the important thing. Then for the spirit on the offhand setup, because we are spending a lot of time here, we actually want to prioritize mana regen and spirit, of course, so that we still have over, in my case, 400 spirits, so I can summon 4 totems. So first things first is spirits. Make sure you're above however many totems you can on your main hand setup. Then prioritize mana regen. After that, you prioritize your mana, because you still want to have a decent mana pool on either setup. So now let's talk a bit about the offensive scaling of this build. Like I said earlier, we're using Archmage to give us a % of extra damage, of the damage of the skill as extra lightning damage. This means that once you start really scaling your mana, you're going to be doing more lightning damage with Dark Effigy than you will be doing chaos damage. This effectively means that for curses, we're going to be using conductivity. We're going to be really pushing the lightning portion of the hits and not the chaos portion, because the lightning accounts for a lot more than the chaos. Also keep in mind, you cannot convert the lightning portion, because this is a gain as extra modifier, and that appears after conversions have taken place. So it has to stay as lightning. For that, because Dark Effigy is a chaos skill, we're also able to use the +1 to chaos skill node on the tree, which just helps a bit with the damage. We are using modifiers like increased lightning damage per int on the top of the tree, named Pure Power. We're using spell damage per 100 max mana, which is arcane intensity on the tree. We're scaling cast speed, which just makes the totem shoot faster. And of course, it makes casting your skills faster, like I said earlier. And then we're using jewels for some nice quality of life scaling. Now, keep in mind, we're using a Prism of Belief as one of the jewels. This is +3 to all Dark Effigy skills. This jewel is very cheap. Nobody cares about Dark Effigy, and as such, I got mine for 140-ish exalt, which at the time was just slightly over a divine. So you can still get it. The rest of the jewels, we're gonna get 2 rubies, and make sure one of your jewels are corrupted. With corrupted blood cannot be inflicted. I personally elect for the ruby to be the corrupted one because we have 2 priority stats there, which you can find on a corrupted version pretty easily. That is weapon swap speed, so you don't spend as much time on the swap before you cast the spell, and it just makes it feel a whole lot smoother to play. Prioritize that, get that as high as possible. And then the second priority on the rubies are totem placement speed. You want that to also be as high as possible. Once you have your 2 rubies, you want to just fill out the rest with sapphires. And your sapphires, you want them to have AoE. The reason for AoE is not because Dark Effigy scales well with AoE. It's more so contagion spreading skills with AoE. And by having your contagion spread with AoE, it's comfier. It just feels better. You don't have to spam quite as much when it comes to wave clearing. So we're scaling AoE, we're scaling skill effect duration, so that on single targets you do not have to keep pianoing every second just to keep all your debuffs on max uptime. You're scaling skill effect duration, and then you're going to be scaling mana regen for obvious reasons. If you can get increased spell damage, it's completely optional. If you can't, ignore it. Reason for increased spell damage is it increases the chaos and the lightning portion, so it's just good to have if you can. And other than that, that about covers the stats you would like to have on the offensive setup here. So I want to briefly talk about why I chose Gemling Legionnaire. The main reason is it has a higher top end for mana scaling because of the enhanced effectiveness ascendancy node, which doubles the bonus you get from your attributes. Now, this bonus is 2 mana for intelligence, which means the Gemling gets 4 mana per intelligence. And because of the Gemling start area, we get a lot of travel nodes, which means we get a lot of int, and as such, you get a lot of mana, which is very good. The Gemling also has other advantages though. Some not working, some working. And by not working, I mean the quality right now is working for the Gemling. However, Dark Effigy's quality is currently bugged and is not applying Wither. But eventually, this is going to be a free source of Wither to increase the chaos damage portion of the Dark Effigy skill. We are also using implanted gems to give our totems +1 levels. But if you ever feel like the cost of your totems is higher than you would like to pay, or it is higher than your regen can keep up with, then you want to switch implanted gems, which is +1 levels, to advanced thaumaturgy, which is the node that makes it so you have 30% less cost of skills. This effectively adds or works like having inspiration on a support gem. So it's kind of like having a 7th link, if you will. But I personally in game have no issues using the +1. The mana skill, the mana cost for the level is still on the wrap. So it's just something to keep in mind if you ever get into a mana issue problems with Dark Effigy level scaling. That about covers all the information I wanted to cover on this build. If you have any questions, do leave it down in the comments. I tried to make this video as concise as possible, but there's just so much that went into this build that it doesn't even surprise me that it took as long as it did. But anyways, if you made it this far, appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Do consider liking and subscribing, as it would help a lot in hitting that 2,000 sub goal that we kind of set for ourselves. And with all that said, thank you for watching.